I want to talk about the diet that completely changed my life, the one that eventually led me to the potato diet. And I don't mean that in a hype way or this worked for me so it must work for you kind of way. I mean it very literally. It changed how my body functions, how my head feels, how much energy I have to move, and how capable I feel just getting through normal days. What still gets under my skin though is how long I fought it. When I look back over the last 20 years of my life, the thing that shaped everything wasn't education or work or money. It was what I ate. The food I ate quietly dictated my energy, my mood and my confidence, even how I saw the world. So let me go back. For years I was deep into keto. It gave me structure, rules and a sense of control, especially when I didn't have much else figured out. And the thing that people don't always understand about keto, especially if you haven't lived it long term, is that it can become a full-time mental hobby. You're not just eating, you're managing food constantly, checking labels, calculating, adjusting, just turning everything into a math problem. The uncomfortable part to admit is that I was still obsessed with food. I wasn't eating cake, but I was constantly chasing replacements. And if you're always trying to recreate the food you're restricting, you're not free. You're just running a quieter version of the same obsession. So that eventually pushed me onto a carnivore diet. And I'm not pretending it did nothing for me, because it did. Carnivore worked at first. It simplified everything. No decisions or variety and no constant food noise. For a couple of years, I felt stable and calm, like my brain finally shut up around food. Over time though, my energy dropped and movement started feeling really heavy, and sleep quality got really bad. And I don't just mean one bad night, I mean the kind of restless sleep where you wake up and you're not restored. Like you slept, technically, but you didn't recover. Cravings came back as well in a real way. Along with brain fog and low stamina, I could no longer rationalise. I was doing the strictest version of what I thought was supposed to be the healthiest way to eat, and my body was just getting worse. The biggest mistake people make is thinking that there's only one right way to eat. Plant-based, carnivore, sugar diet, none of it matters if it turns into an ideology. What matters most is whether your food supports your energy, your mood, your sleep and your ability to live your life. I mean, I don't really see this as a diet at all. It's just the way I eat when I want my body to function properly. This way of eating is built around simple one-ingredient foods. Foods that exist in nature, or at least as close to it as possible. And every time I drift away from that, my body makes it very clear. When I brought carbs back in, starting with an animal-based approach, the change was immediate. Energy for daily movement came back. Walking stopped feeling heavy, sleep improved, but mixing high fat and high carb over time led to weight gain and fatty liver. So I had to be honest about what was working and what wasn't. So that's when I went high carb, low fat, plant-based, and that's when I moved on to the rice diet, which later became the stepping stone to the potato diet. Not because it sounded good on paper, but because my body was clearly asking for it. My head felt clearer, and the biggest thing for me was the calm I felt in my body. Not excited or wired, just steady. So I stayed on the rice diet for 3 months, and I know the diet sounds weird to some people, but it was the first time in years that my body felt like it was working with me instead of against me. The constant food chatter dropped, the urge to binge faded, and my days just felt smoother. You know, cravings aren't random. Sometimes they're emotional, sometimes they're nutritional, but almost always they're information. When I started eating simple, real food consistently, the noise quieted down. Food stopped being entertainment and became fuel. And that changed my relationship with myself. Some people would ask me exactly what I ate, but that's never been the real lesson. The lesson is learning which foods make you feel clear, calm and energized, and being honest when something doesn't, even if it's popular or praised. And since today is Christmas Day, yeah, things are a little bit more relaxed. I'm not weighing my food or counting calories today, but even on days like this, my body still gives me feedback and I pay attention to it. Anyway, after the rice diet, I went on a trip and took a break. Nothing extreme, I just started eating like a normal person again. More variety, mixed macros, restaurant food, and everything fell apart fast. Brain fog came back almost immediately. Sleep got worse and the motivation to do absolutely anything just went out the window. My body felt so inflamed and slow, like I was dragging myself through the day. That trip made something obvious to me. When I'm not eating in a way that supports my body, high carb, low fat, everything unravels pretty quickly. That was the moment I finally stopped arguing with reality. I could no longer mix macros freely and feel good. Not right now, and maybe never. I don't know, but I know what happens when I currently do. Pretending otherwise doesn't make me more flexible, it just makes my life worse. When I got home, I didn't negotiate with it. I didn't try to balance things or prove that I could eat like everyone else. I took a week to decide the next stage in my life and landed on the potato diet. Simple, mono, boring by internet standards, and again, after around a week, my body settled down. Energy and mental clarity came back. The sleep improved. It felt like my body finally had less to process and could just go back to living. That's why I keep coming back to simple one-ingredient foods. Rice, lentils, and now potatoes, which is why the potato diet ended up sticking for me. Stuff that doesn't need a label or a justification. And that's the part people miss. Food isn't just weight. Food is how your brain feels in your skull. Food is whether you feel wired and irritated or steady and normal. Ultra-processed foods doesn't make you sick overnight, it just teaches you to accept feeling worse. Diet doesn't just affect weight or aesthetics, it shapes mood, sleep, motivation, depression, and how life really feels. Sometimes what we call depression is really a signal that something about the way we're living, eating included, is not aligned. I'm not saying food is the only answer. I'm saying it's not separate from the answer. If you wake up every day feeling like you're trying to swim through mud, it's very hard to build a good life on top of that. And I spent years doing that and blaming myself. I don't think humans are broken, I think modern food is. The reason this stuck and the reason I can say this diet changed my life forever is because it's not about chasing a result. It changed how my life feels day to day. This way of eating didn't just change my body, it changed how I think, how I feel, and how I trust myself. That's why it stuck. Not because it's perfect, but because it's honest. I'm not trying to recruit people or win an argument. I'm just paying attention to feedback. Your body gives you feedback long before your mind catches up, and certain environments drain you no matter how much you try to justify them. There's no one way to eat, only the way that lets you live your life with energy and clarity. For me, high carb, low fat, simple plant-based, one-ingredient foods do that better than all the years I spent trying to force low carb to be the answer. I don't see this as a diet anymore, it's just the structure my life seems to need right now. The potato diet was a turning point that made everything else click. This changed how my life feels, and the annoying part is, I think my body was telling me this years ago. I just didn't want it to be true.